The first lash struck the dirt beside Clara Whitmore's boots, spraying dust across her black mourning dress. 2 men held her arms while Caleb Voss raised the horsewhip again. 50 people watched from Red Hollow's boardwalks. Sheriff Warren Pike watched too, and did nothing. Daniel Whitmore stole from every family in this town. Caleb called, since he's dead, his widow can settle the debt. The next lash caught her sleeve. Clara stayed upright. Clara lifted her chin. Then prove he stole it. No one answered. Caleb held out a folded deed. Sign your ranch over to Voss Mining Company. No. The whip cracked against the hitching rail inches from her hand. Sheriff Pike looked away. You have a badge, Clara said. Caleb laughed. That badge knows who pays the county taxes. He raised the whip again. Try that once more. The voice came from the far end of the street. A tall man stood beside a black gelding, gray trail coat dusty at the hem, Colt Peacemaker low on his right hip. He did not draw it. Caleb lowered the whip. This ain't your concern, stranger. The man walked into the street. It became my concern when everybody else decided not to have one. Know who I am? No. Caleb Voss. My father owns a mine. Then he can afford another whip. Caleb lifted the leather handle again. The stranger's hand dropped beside his holster. And you'll spend the rest of your life learning to eat with your other hand. Caleb froze. One of his men stared at the stranger. Kane. That's Silas Kane. The name moved through the crowd. Clara had heard it before. An Arizona gunfighter wrapped in more rumor than fact. Let her go, he said. The men released Clara. Caleb pointed the deed at her. Your husband's debts don't die because he did. Your land covers them. My land belonged to my father. Silas took one step forward. Caleb stopped talking. For the first time, Clara saw fear on a Voss man's face. Caleb mounted with his men. You won't always be standing beside her, Kane. Silas said, Choose your moment careful. When they rode away, people scattered as though they had witnessed bad weather instead of cowardice. Sheriff Pike crossed the street. Miss Whitmore, you should go home. Clara stared at him. You stood there. Pike removed his hat and walked away. Clara brushed dust from her sleeves. Why did you interfere? Silas looked down the road Caleb had taken. Because everybody else didn't. That isn't an answer. It'll have to serve. They walked toward Maybelle Reed's boarding house. Silver-haired Maybelle hurried from the doorway and went still when she saw Silas. Clara noticed. You know him? Only by reputation, Maybelle said. Silas's eyes dropped to Clara's wedding band. What was your husband's name? Daniel Whitmore. Silas stopped. Only for a heartbeat, but Clara saw it. You knew him? Silas said nothing. Her voice hardened. You didn't stop Caleb because you happened to be passing through. No. Why are you in Red Hollow? I came to keep a promise. To Daniel. Silas met her gaze. Before he could answer, Maybelle whispered, Not here. Across the street, a clerk hurried into the Voss Bank. Silas watched the door close. By sundown, Bartholomew Voss wanted the stranger's name, room, horse, and everyone who spoke to him. Silas rented at Maybelle's anyway. Clara rode home angry that Daniel had left another secret behind. After dark, Silas saddled the black gelding and rode north to the cemetery beyond the church. He found Daniel's grave without asking directions. Daniel Whitmore, 1851 to 1887. Beloved husband. Silas removed the silver coin and placed on the stone. I told you I'd come. Daniel had once hidden a wounded Silas from armed men and asked nothing in return. Before they parted, he made Silas promise that if trouble reached Clara, he would not look away. Silas had come 6 months too late. He heard a faint scrape beyond the cemetery fence. His hand moved toward the Colt. Nothing but darkness between the cottonwoods. He turned back to the grave. I was too late for you. I won't be too late for her. At midnight, Silas returned to Maybelle's boarding house. She was waiting in the dark kitchen with an envelope in her hand. Daniel left this with me, she said. Told me to give it to a man named Kane if he ever came. Silas studied the handwriting. If you were Clara, would you trust a man who defended her, or demand the whole truth before letting him into her fight? He opened the envelope. Inside was one sentence. If I die, don't trust Pike. Find a mine ledger. Outside, a shadow slipped away. Hooves pounded toward the Voss estate. Someone had heard Daniel's warning, and now Voss knew Silas had come for the ledger. Silas read Daniel's warning twice. If I die, don't trust Pike. Find a mine ledger. Maybelle whispered. He gave me that 3 weeks before they found him dead. Did he say where the ledger was? No, only that it could ruin Bartholomew Voss. Silas folded the note. Bolt the door. If anyone asks, I left town. Are you leaving? No. By sunrise, Clara was repairing the north fence. Someone had cut it during the night and scattered cattle. She heard a horse and reached for the shotgun. Silas stopped at the gate. You greet every visitor that way. Only the ones who know things about my dead husband. He handed her Daniel's note. She read it. You knew him. Yes. How? 3 years ago near Socorro, 2 men put a rifle ball through my shoulder. Daniel found me first, hid me in a line shack, and lied to the men hunting me. Daniel never told me. Later he wrote me, said if anything happened to him, I was to make sure you knew he tried to do the right thing. Clara looked up. What ledger? I don't know. Then we find out. They reset fence posts together. Clara refused his money, but allowed him to work. Near noon, a wagon from the general store stopped at the gate. The owner had supplies, but he did not unload them. I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitmore. Your account's closed. I pay cash. Voss Bank called your note due. Anything sold to you can be seized against the debt. Clara stared at him. So Voss owns a flower before I buy it? The man looked ashamed. I've got children. So does Voss own them too? He drove away. Silas watched him go. This isn't about Daniel. No. What does Voss want? My land. Why? I wish I knew. That afternoon they rode to Red Hollow. Bartholomew Voss met Clara inside the bank, silver-haired and carefully dressed. He spoke as if Caleb had not held a whip over her. Mrs. Whitmore, I regret the unpleasantness. You paid for it. Your husband left obligations. Then show me the note bearing his signature. Voss's smile tightened. Silas entered. Mr. Kane, Voss said, you know me? I know armed men who enter my town. Silas said, I know men who buy sheriffs. The bank went silent. Voss's eyes cooled. So can ledgers, Silas said. For one heartbeat, Voss lost his smile. Outside, Clara caught Silas's sleeve. You knew that would frighten him. I hoped. So the ledger is real. Yes, and Voss thinks you know where it is. At Maybelle's boarding house, the older woman went pale when Silas mentioned the ledger. I saw Caleb the night Daniel died, she said. Clara froze. He rode south after dark with 3 men, came back before sunrise, mud on all 4 horses. Why didn't you tell me? Pike came here the next morning, said a widow might lose more than a husband if old women started inventing stories. Silas's jaw tightened. Where does the South Road lead? The old smelter trail, Clara said. Daniel used it when he worked late. At dusk, they rode out. Near the abandoned works, Silas found old hoof marks. Clara picked up a brass button stamped with the V used on Voss mining coats. "Daniel died less than 2 miles from here," she whispered. Silas followed wagon scars to a shallow ravine. Beneath brush lay the broken lid of a strong box. He wiped away dirt. "Red Hollow mine payroll." Clara stared. Daniel was accused of stealing that. "Yes." The lock had been smashed. Someone wanted him blamed, Silas said. A rifle shot cracked from the ridge. Silas pulled Clara behind the stone culvert as another round struck the road. "Can you see him?" "No." A third shot came. Then silence. Silas did not pursue. Darkness was falling. They returned by a dry creek bed. Behind Maybelle's house, Clara stopped him. "You came because you owed Daniel. At first. And now." Silas held her gaze. Maybelle opened the rear door. Inside, a notice on the kitchen table called Clara's entire debt due by sundown the next day. If she failed to pay, the ranch would be seized. Silas read the figure. "This amount is false." "I know," Clara said. "Can you prove it?" "No." Maybelle hesitated. "A week before Daniel died, he asked me whether a man could hide a book somewhere no banker would willingly enter." Clara frowned. Then her expression changed. "The abandoned miners' chapel beyond Widow's Ridge. Voss closed it after the cave-in. He never goes there." Silas folded the notice. "Then we leave before dawn." Later, Clara mounted outside the stable. "I'll ride you home," Silas said. "No. If they are watching, they expect us together." "You sure?" "I survived 6 months without you, Mr. Kane." That sounds like a complaint. "It might be." She rode away. Silas returned upstairs. His room door stood open. He drew his Colt and entered. No one was inside. A bullet hole marked the wall above his bed. On the blanket lay a folded paper. "Leave Red Hollow or the widow dies next." Silas crossed to the window. Beyond town, an orange light moved toward Clara's ranch. Not a lantern. A torch. Then a second flame appeared behind it. Silas was down the stairs before Maybelle could call his name. Silas reached Clara's ranch with torchlight coming over the rise behind him. "Barn!" he shouted. Clara came out with a shotgun. One rider hurled a burning rag toward the hay shed. Silas fired into the dirt beside the horse, making it rear. Clara knocked the flame into a water barrel before it caught. A second man raised a rifle. Silas fired once. The rifle spun from his hands. "Ride." The attackers fled. Clara read the warning from Silas's room. "Leave Red Hollow or the widow dies next." "They're done frightening me," she said. "Now, they mean to finish it." Then we find Daniel's ledger first. At dawn they rode to the abandoned miners' chapel beyond Widow's Ridge. Inside, Clara searched the pulpit while Silas checked the floorboards. "Daniel brought me here once," she said. "Said a church without a congregation was still a place where a man ought to tell the truth." "Did he?" "Not enough." Near the altar, Clara found scratches around one plank. Silas pried it loose. A tin box lay beneath it. Inside was a leather ledger stamped Voss Mining Company. Payroll columns filled the pages. Beside miners' names were deductions for tools, lodging, and debts to Voss-owned stores. Men who should have received $40 had received 10, some nothing. Then Clara saw Daniel's handwriting. Payroll total does not match bank withdrawal. 3,000 missing. Asked BV, no answer. Daniel found the theft. And Voss blamed him for it. Hooves sounded outside. 4 riders waited below the chapel. Caleb Voss sat in front. Father said you might go digging after old ghosts. Clara slipped the ledger beneath her coat. One of Caleb's men stared at Silas. I know you. The man's face changed. Marshal Kane. Clara turned. Deputy U.S. Marshal, Silas said, years ago. Caleb's smile weakened. Silas rested his hand beside his Colt. Now you know why I understand evidence. Caleb looked at Clara. You got until sundown to sign over that ranch. No. Then don't blame me for what follows. He rode away with his men. Clara faced Silas. You were a federal lawman. I was. And you forgot to mention it? I stopped deserving the badge. Silas looked toward the ridge. In Arizona, I pushed a pursuit too fast. The men I hunted took shelter with a family. I thought I could force an ending before nightfall. His voice flattened. Innocent people died. Clara's anger faded. I resigned, kept moving after that. Daniel knew? He knew enough. Told me running from what I'd done didn't make me better. Doing something better might. So that's why you came. At first. And now. Silas met her eyes. Now I don't like the thought of you facing Voss alone. That still isn't quite an answer. It's the closest one I've got. They rode back by the southern trail. On a ridge above Clara's property, men were driving survey stakes into ground beside a Voss wagon. They have no right to be there, Clara said. Silas studied exposed stone along the wash. Maybe rights aren't what Voss is measuring. They carried a sample to Ezra Bell, an old prospector outside town. Ezra scraped it with a knife. Silver-bearing lead. If that vein runs under your pasture, your land may be worth more than Voss's present mine. Clara understood. The debt, the bank, Caleb. They don't just want payment, Silas said. They want your ground. Back at the ranch, they compared Daniel's notes with the ledger. One entry appeared repeatedly. South Extension, W property. Daniel had discovered why Voss needed Clara's land. Near the back, several pages had been cut out. The proof is gone, Clara said. Silas examined the torn edge. Pressed between 2 pages was a scrap in Daniel's handwriting. That copy sent out if anything happens to me. A copy? Maybe the missing pages. Maybelle arrived before sunset. I remembered something Daniel said 2 days before he died. He asked whether the old chapel still had loose floorboards. Silas held up the ledger. We found it. Maybelle saw the missing pages. He said there were 2 hiding places. Clara stepped closer. Where was the second? The old mission south of town. He mentioned the bell. Silas reached for his hat. A knock sounded before they could move. Sheriff Pike entered with 2 deputies. His face was pale. Kane, step away from the table. Silas did not reach for his gun. Judge Harlan issued an order. That ledger is claimed as property of Voss Mining Company. Clara stared at Pike. It proves Voss stole from his workers. Pike could not meet her eyes. Then he said, There's also a warrant for your arrest, Mrs. Whitmore. For what? Conspiracy in Daniel Whitmore's payroll theft. Silas's expression hardened. You know that charge is false. Pike lowered his voice. I know what happens if I refuse Voss. One deputy stepped toward Clara. Silas glanced through the window. Across the road stood Caleb beside a wagon. In the wagon bed lay an old mission bell. Tied beneath its iron frame was a leather packet bearing Daniel Whitmore's handwriting. Caleb smiled when he saw Silas looking. The second hiding place had already been found, and Voss now held the evidence that could clear Daniel. Sheriff Pike's deputies closed around Clara. Silas kept his hand away from the Colt. If you take her, he said, you'd better have more than Voss's word. Pike swallowed. I have a warrant. You have paper. Clara looked through the window at Caleb's wagon. Beneath the old mission bell was a leather packet bearing Daniel's handwriting. Let them arrest me. Silas turned. No. If you draw now, Voss gets what he wants. A dead gunman, a guilty widow, and every piece of evidence in his hands. She held out her wrists. Get the packet first. The jail sat behind Pike's office. Clara was locked in the rear cell, while Caleb rode away with the packet. After dark, Silas went to Maybelle. Where would Voss hide it? Not the bank. There's a records room beneath his assay office. Silas reached the office near midnight. The records room door stood open. Bartholomew Voss waited beside a lamp. The packet lay on the table. You could have ridden away, Kane. So could Daniel. Voss smiled. Daniel had the same weakness. Conscience arriving late. Silas's eyes narrowed. Your friend was no saint. Open it. Inside was not the missing ledger page. It was a letter in Daniel's hand. Clara, if you ever read this, then I fail to tell you while I still had courage. I helped Bartholomew Voss hide what he stole. At first I told myself I was only changing numbers. Then I told myself the miners would be paid later. Every excuse bought me another week. I was wrong. Silas stopped reading. Voss watched him. Daniel altered payroll entry for years. He helped conceal shortages until guilt became inconvenient. You killed him. You have no proof. Not yet. Voss leaned back. Think Clara still wants her husband's name cleared after she reads that? She deserves the truth. Truth ruins people more efficiently than bullets. Silas took the letter and left. At the jail, Pike blocked the door. Silas laid Daniel's confession on the desk. Pike read it slowly. This doesn't clear him. No, it tells us what he was trying to fix. Silas pointed to the altered payroll entries. If Daniel helped move the money, he knew where Voss hid it. That's why he made copies. Pike lowered the page. You're asking me to turn against a man who owns half this town. I'm asking whether he owns the badge, too. Pike said nothing. By morning, Clara was released when the judge's clerk refused to hold her without supporting testimony. Outside, Silas handed her Daniel's letter. She read it once. Then again. He lied to me. He was trying to make it right. For how long? I don't know. He let me defend him for 6 months. Silas did not answer. Clara looked at him. And you made him sound noble. I told you what he did for me. You made me believe this was a promise between good men. Daniel was a good man who did bad things. That is not the same as an innocent man. No. Silas did not soften it. Clara folded the letter, then stopped protecting his memory. Silas looked at her. If we fight Voss, we do it with all of Daniel, not the version that makes either of us feel better. That's fair. No, fair would have been Daniel telling me himself. At the ranch, Clara searched Daniel's desk until she found an envelope addressed to an attorney in Santa Fe. Inside was a note. Mr. Felton, the original copy went with the southbound mail coach on March 14th. If it does not reach you, search the Canyon Road before trusting any report of a robbery. Clara looked up. The mail coach. Maybelle remembered it. It vanished in the canyon. Voss blamed bandits. Silas reached for his hat. The wreck lay 8 miles south beneath a washed-out bend. They found a broken axle, rotted canvas, and half a mail sack buried beneath stones. Clara's fingers touched oilcloth. Inside was one ledger page. Bartholomew Voss's signature stood at the bottom. Above it were miners' wages diverted into a private account, followed by Daniel's notation. Ordered by B. Voss. Copied before alteration. Clara stared at it. This proves he stole the money, and that Daniel tried to expose him. Hooves sounded above the canyon. Silas drew his colt. Maybelle appeared on the ridge, riding hard. She nearly fell from the saddle. Don't go back to the ranch. Clara caught her arm. Why? Voss moved first. Pike arrested 2 miners willing to testify. The judge signed new warrants. They've seized your house. Clara went still. Silas folded the page into his coat. We take this to Santa Fe. Maybelle shook her head. You can't. Why? Because there are Voss men on every road. She handed Clara a warrant. Clara Whitmore. Accessory to payroll theft. Fraudulent claim to mineral property. Conspiracy against Voss Mining Company. Authorized to seize all papers, ledgers, correspondence, and personal property in her possession. Voss no longer needed to steal the evidence. The law of Red Hollow had been ordered to take it for him. Silas looked toward the ridge. Lanterns appeared one by one. Sheriff Pike's posse was closing the canyon road. Clara reached for the ledger page inside Silas's coat. No more running. Silas met her eyes. Above them, Pike's voice carried through the dark. Kane, send Clara out with the evidence, or Voss's men come down shooting. Silas drew the colt. For the first time, Pike was no longer standing safely on the other side of the line. Silas stepped from behind the canyon rock, with his colt lowered. Pike, you want the evidence, come take it yourself. Sheriff Warren Pike appeared above the trail with 2 deputies. 4 Voss riders waited behind him. Put the gun down. Silas obeyed. One hired man started forward, but Pike blocked him. I'm making the arrest. Mr. Voss said bring back the page. That ain't the same order. Silas held out his wrists. Take me instead. Clara stared at him. As the deputy bound Silas, he slipped the folded ledger page into Clara's palm. Get it where people can see it, he whispered. Pike ordered Clara and Maybelle away before the Voss men could object. At Maybelle's boarding house, they spread Daniel's ledger, confession, and surviving page across the kitchen table. We need more than paper, Clara said. Voss owns a judge and the bank. Then make the town hear it, Maybelle replied. They went to the miners' quarter. Clara showed the figures to Amos Bell, whose brother had died believing Daniel stole his wages. Your brother earned $44 that month. Voss paid him $11. Amos studied Daniel's notes. Daniel helped him? Yes. Clara forced herself not to soften it. He helped Voss hide theft until he finally tried to stop him. I won't clear Daniel by lying about what he did. Amos looked at Bartholomew's signature. What do you want? Tomorrow at noon, I'm reading this on Main Street. You'll be arrested. Probably. Killed. Maybe. Amos folded his arms. Then you shouldn't stand there alone. By morning, word had spread. Miners compared old receipts. Widows searched payment records. Storekeepers opened account books they had ignored for years. Voss answered with notices on every post. Clara Whitmore, fugitive. Silas Kane, armed interference with lawful authority. Any person aiding them subject to arrest. Then Caleb came to Maybelle's boarding house with 3 men and a torch. You've got 10 minutes to send Clara out. Maybelle stood on the porch with a shotgun. Clara stepped out. You want me? I'm here. Caleb, search your coat. No legged. Where is it? Somewhere your father can't buy. His face hardened. Take her. Across town, Silas sat behind bars. Pike entered alone and unlocked the cell. Silas did not move. Why? Voss sent word. Afternoon, I'm to report Clara was killed attempting escape. Silas's eyes went cold. And you? You were to die reaching for a weapon. Pike placed Silas's Colt on the desk. Silas picked it up. You coming? Pike looked at his badge. I don't know. That answers why Voss owns you. Silas left. By noon, Main Street was full. Bartholomew Voss stood on the bank steps. Caleb held Clara between two armed men. Voss raised a hand. This woman and her husband conspired to rob Red Hollow. Kane came here to destroy evidence and extort my company. Then Maybelle pushed through the crowd. No. She held Daniel's ledger overhead. Voss went pale. Amos Bell and 6 miners joined her. One carried payroll receipts, another bank slips, another Daniel's copied figures. Clara understood. Maybelle had divided the evidence. No single arrest could erase it. All forged, Voss said. Then you won't mind us reading them, Maybelle replied. She began with names. Men heard the wages they had earned and the smaller amounts they had received. Widows heard withdrawals made in dead husbands' names. Every line made the street quieter. Bartholomew turned to Caleb. Caleb grabbed Clara and drew his revolver. Silas appeared at the far end of the street. Nobody spoke. He walked forward without drawing. Caleb pressed the gun against Clara's side. One more step. Silas stopped. Voss smiled. The famous Silas Kane finally understands limits. Silas looked at Clara. She gave the smallest shake of her head. Do not trade the evidence for her life. Voss faced the crowd. Go home. Anyone still standing here in 1 minute loses his job, his credit, and every favor this town has ever given him. People began backing away. One miner left. Then another. Hope thinned from the street. Voss leaned toward Clara. This is what Daniel never understood. Men don't choose truth. They choose bread. A rifle clicked from the bank roof. Another gunman stepped into the alley. Silas counted 5. Too many to draw without Clara paying first. Then Amos Bell stepped back into the street. My brother worked 12 years for you. A widow joined him. You took my husband's last pay. The blacksmith stepped beside her. Then the storekeeper. The retreat stopped. One by one, townspeople returned to the street. Bartholomew's smile vanished. Caleb looked at his father. What now? Voss snapped. Take the ledger. Arrest them all. No one moved. He shouted toward the sheriff's office. Pike! The door opened. Sheriff Warren Pike crossed the street slowly. Voss exhaled. About time. Pike stopped between Voss and the crowd. Then he removed his badge. For a moment Clara thought he was surrendering. Instead, Pike placed it on the bank steps at Bartholomew Voss's feet. I've arrested enough innocent people for you. Caleb swung his revolver toward Pike. Silas's hand dropped beside his Colt. 5 hired guns reached for theirs. And this time, Red Hollow did not step back. Caleb's revolver cleared leather first. Silas fired once. The shot struck Caleb's gun and sent it spinning across the bank steps. Caleb staggered back, clutching his hand. The hired men froze. Silas did not aim at them. You boys getting paid enough to die for a man who's already lost? One gunman looked at the crowd. Amos Bell stood with a rifle across his chest. Miners, widows, storekeepers, and ranch hands filled the street behind Clara. The man lowered his revolver. A second followed. Then a third threw his weapon into the dust. Bartholomew Voss stared at them. Cowards. His hand slipped inside his coat. Pike saw it. Voss, don't. A derringer appeared. He did not aim at Silas. He aimed at Clara. Pike lunged. The shot cracked. Clara fell with Pike as he shoved her clear. Silas crossed the distance before Voss could fire again, knocked the derringer away, and drove him against the bank wall. For one dangerous second, Red Hollow waited for Silas Kane to become the killer the stories claimed he was. Then Silas saw Clara sit up. Pike held one shoulder, wounded but alive. Silas turned Voss toward him. Arrest him? Pike looked at the badge lying on the step. Amos picked it up. You quit working for Voss. That ain't the same as quitting us. Pike fastened the badge to his vest with his good hand. Bartholomew Voss, you're under arrest. Voss laughed. On what evidence? Maybelle raised Daniel's ledger. Amos held the payroll receipts. Clara drew out the surviving page. And witnesses. Hands rose across the street. Miners who had been cheated. Widows whose husbands' wages had vanished. Storekeepers Voss had threatened. Even two of his former gunmen stepped away from him. For years Bartholomew had bought Red Hollow silence. That afternoon, he learned silence could not be owned forever. Caleb was bound beside his father. Pike ordered the guns collected and sent a deputy to the telegraph office with a message for federal authorities in Santa Fe. Silas holstered his Colt. Clara looked at him. You could have killed Voss. Yes. Why didn't you? Because then this would have become a story about me. She looked at the townspeople. And it isn't. No, it's about them finally standing up. 3 weeks later, a deputy U.S. Marshal and examiner arrived from Santa Fe. They checked Daniel's ledger against the bank books and mine payrolls. The truth was harder than the story Red Hollow had told itself. Daniel Whitmore had altered records for Voss in earlier years. He had helped conceal shortages because admitting the truth would have cost him his position. Later, he copied the original accounts, documented Voss's theft, tried to send proof to Santa Fe, and refused to surrender Clara's land. Daniel had made mistakes. He had also died trying to correct them. The examiner cleared him of the payroll robbery that had stained his name. Outside the courthouse, Clara handed Silas Daniel's confession. For 6 months, I wanted somebody to tell me he was innocent. And now I know what he did wrong, and I know what he chose to do afterward. Silas folded the letter. Daniel once told me running from what I'd done wouldn't make me better. Clara studied him. Maybe he was talking to himself, too. Bartholomew was taken under federal guard to Santa Fe. Caleb went with him to face charges for the attack on Clara and the shooting in the street. The false lien was voided, and Voss's accounts were opened so cheated families could make their claims. Pike remained sheriff. His shoulder healed slowly, but his habits changed faster. Months later, Clara replaced a weathered sign at her gate. Whitmore Ranch came down. Redemption Ranch went up. Silas stood below the ladder. You sure? I'm not forgetting Daniel, Clara said. I'm remembering what he was trying to become. Silas nodded and walked toward his black gelding. A bedroll was tied behind the saddle. Where are you going? Figure my debt to Daniel is paid. And is that all that kept you here? His hands became still. No. Clara stepped closer. I've spent a long time leaving places before they could ask me to stay, he said. I'm not asking forever. What are you asking? Breakfast. Silas blinked. Breakfast. Tomorrow morning, you could decide about supper afterward. For the first time since she had known him, Silas laughed. He untied the bedroll. Clara carried it toward the house. Silas followed. 1 year later, the south pasture fence stood straight again. Clara hung washing beside the porch, while Silas repaired a broken rail. His black, gelding grazed near the barn. On the kitchen table rested a deputy U.S. Marshal badge. He had returned to the law, but now every assignment ended with a road back to Red Hollow. At sunset, he joined Clara on the porch. She handed him coffee. "Staying for breakfast tomorrow?" "I reckon I can manage one more." She smiled. Silas kissed her forehead and sat beside her as the last light settled over the New Mexico hills. Daniel had spent his final days correcting his mistakes. Silas had spent years running from his own. Clara had learned that redemption did not erase the past. It decided what a person did next. If this Western tale of courage and second chances stayed with you, subscribe and return for another story from Frontier.